Intro, it says. Hello, good evening, and hope you enjoyed us finally getting the entrance video to work in the right order. Welcome to another of our live streams, October. So, usual crew from the live streams. We've got Indypodcaster Marlene Halliday. We've got our special and regular guest, Lynn Dugan, and me, Fiona McGregor. So, we're just going to go through what's been happening in October. Now, I remember at the beginning of October, Marlene, we were saying, I haven't really got much news this month. Is anything going to happen? And then, wallop, the big one. Alex Salmond, of course.
Yeah.
Whose funeral was today. So we'll just have to see if there is a memorial service. I'm sure there will be. But just what was your immediate reaction once you heard?
I was actually on Twitter. I was on Twitter and I was posting. I was setting up a series of tweets for our latest podcast. And while I was doing that, a tweet came. Got flagged up. Who's someone who follows me, or I follow them. Can't remember. And it just said, "Oh dear, that's dreadful about Alex Salmond." And I went, "Oh." So that was the first that I came across it, and then I went on into that tweet, and then the person had said a bit more, and I heard that's just shock. It was just such a shock. I mean, it's not he's not elderly really. He's 69. I mean, so I was doing something, about Scottish independence, and then this sort of icon of independence movement. Without Alex Salmond, we wouldn't be where we are in terms of popularity and kind of momentum for independence. So yes, it's quite shocking.
When I saw it at first, I actually thought it was a spoof. I thought, this is somebody like larking around, and then I started seeing it coming up as the sort of ticker tape under in news and things like that, and I thought, oh no, this is real, and it was, as you say, it was a real kind of shock, because comparatively young man for this day and age,
I remember we'd been doing a static saltires event, Lynn, hadn't we, in Stirling? So we'd actually spent the afternoon waving saltires in a field, and then when I got home, you messaged me, and I just couldn't believe it. But so those pictures that we've got up there, they came from the All Under One Banner March in Glasgow in May, was it? April, May?
May.
And actually, we've got some people in the comments already. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Hi, Woof Pet. Hi, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce Snurf. Is it? And Zenbloke, welcome. Yes, he was a very friendly guy. And in fact, we've got a little clip that we're going to play of, we met him in that march, and we kind of assumed he didn't know us from Adam, but as it turned out, he did. So, but let's just play that.
Hello, fine, thank you. You'll probably not remember, I interviewed you a few years back for Indy Live, but this is Scottish Independence Podcast.
Two ladies.
Yes, that's right, me and Fiona. Fiona's here somewhere, but...
you lost Fiona?
Yeah,
How you doing? Hiya.
Are you past the chocolate? You going the whole way over to Glasgow? Because I tell you, I'm not.
I've actually looked for my camera. Because I'm meant to be doing the same thing as you today.
Right, okay.
So we'll see if we can get in front and meet people coming into Glasgow Green.
Yeah.
With the best thing.
Yeah.
They stopped the march.
Right, okay. So I watch your podcast as often as I can. I was watching Isabel Lindsay on it this week.
She is actually.
Very clever lady.
So if we get...
And that was lovely. He just was so friendly, and you know, and we thought when he said he watch your podcast as often as can, we thought, aye, right, you do. And then, but he knew who we had on that week.
Exactly. He said that, and I thought, oh, charmer, you're just, so I bet you don't. And then and then obviously he'd watched the one with that had Isabel Lindley in it. It was Isabel and Bill, wasn't it? And I mean, did you know? I mean, you could see from that, even just that little clip, really. I mean, like there was people at the side sort of shouting, "Oh, hi, Alex," kind of waving back. So yeah, friendly and a good guy.
And actually, Tasmania had kind of said, right, come on, the car's here, or whatever it was she said. And he actually stopped and said something that made us feel good. And it's one of those things, isn't it? Because we were thinking, oh, we must interview him, must invite him on, and just didn't get it in time. But we're going to stay with us, folks, because right at the end for our fade out clip, our ending film, we've actually got a video of Alex's coffin being taken north with the S-Bikers escort. And just to give credit where it's due, I got that from YouTube by somebody called the Emir of Jokistan. That may not be his real name, I don't know, but I hope he doesn't mind us using it. But we have put it to a little bit of music as well. So stay at the end and enjoy that. I think given that he is being buried today, that's maybe a nice way to finish the show. Anyway, so we were also going to, his last tweet proved to be quite topical as well, didn't it?
Yes, and I've got it here just so people can see it. Of course, it's the very last sentence. Scotland is a country, not a county. That's kind of, I don't know if it exactly went viral, but it's certainly been picked up as such a touching. That's what he said, and then he.
I think it's succinct and it struck a chord with a lot of people. Yeah. So much so that I've seen it on T-shirts already.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're also going to use that as the title for this episode, I think, because it's such a good soundbite. But it's quite interesting though, because his tweet, it was one of a series of tweets. It was the final one, and it kind of just completely struck a chord. Because when we heard that there was going to be a Council of Nations and Regions, it was going to be up in Scotland, but we weren't having any of our equivalent of the mayors of these other regions invited, and it seemed to be, diminishing Scotland, so it was on the same level as the mayor of Peterborough, for goodness sake. And that actually just struck a chord because there was a lot of people quite angry about that.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, one of the previous, that's the last of a set of 5 tweets. And one of the earlier ones, he was just saying, what he said, or I'm just kind of reading it here, was so that's Alex speaking. I'm not, oh no, wrong one. Sorry, folks. I'm just kind of
live. It's live.
It's just live. Oh dear! Now I'm embarrassed. Here we go. That John Swinney's attendance at the grandly titled Council of the Nations and Regions. He's sort of saying, let's not pretend that doesn't carry a perception of a regional status for the nation of Scotland. It does deliver that status, and I mean. I've been all week actually. I've been kind of shouting at the TV, going, "Swinney, Mr. Swinney, why the hell were you even at that meeting?" Because I felt the same thing. It just sounded like, well, there's English regions, and then there's nations, but really they're just kind of like regions of the United Kingdom. So that was what he was picking up on, and then it ends up with the one Scotland as a country, not a county.
Susan Aitken, the provost, the leader of Glasgow Council, she'd also tweeted, well, if you've got the mayor of Manchester and the mayor of this, how come no representative from Glasgow? And also, it's taking place in Edinburgh. Why have you not got anybody from Edinburgh Council? And I kind of thought, I'm in two minds about that, because I thought, well, yes, there are all these other mayors there, so ours should be there as well. But then I thought, but our mayors don't work directly to Keir Starmer. They do work to the Scottish government, or the Scottish governments above them.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so fair enough, that Alec picked up on that. But the thing was, the media had not given us the whole story.
No.
The only thing I ever saw on BBC News, and I think I didn't see anything on Channel 4 either, but might have been, was about that meeting, the one about the Council of Nations and Regions. But as we found out from John Swinney himself later on, that actually was nothing like the whole story. And I think, have you got the clip for that?
I have, yes.
Well, let's talk about the relationship between Holyrood and Westminster. You attended the New Nations and Regions Council on Friday. I understand that you have said that you, as First Minister, will only talk to the Prime Minister directly. Where does that leave the Prime Minister's so-called envoy, Sue Gray?
I think it's important to know what happened on Friday at the event in Edinburgh. The morning started for me with a one-to-one meeting with the Prime Minister, as I would expect the First Minister to have. It was followed by a collective meeting between the First Ministers of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland and the Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland with the Prime Minister in the real intergovernmental space which has always been there within the United Kingdom, although sadly neglected by the last Conservative government. And then there was the wider Council of the Nations and the Regions, where I thought it was important to be there to make sure that I could assert the Scottish interest and to make sure that I protected the Scottish interest. Now, from my perspective, I'm going to deal with the Prime Minister. I expect, as the elected leader of the government in Scotland, to have a direct relationship with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he's confirmed to me that's his expectation as well and his way of working. So there'll obviously be officials, an envoy is an official, and they can engage with my officials. But for my part, as First Minister of Scotland, I'll be dealing directly with the Prime Minister.
So that's quite a different slant, isn't it?
That's a bit of a different. I mean, that just gives you the whole picture. And immediately when I heard that, I thought, oh, well, okay. I mean, there's still the thing about the optics of the nations and regions thing still stands, I think. But it wasn't the whole. But it wasn't the whole picture at all. So it just makes such a difference when you know that.
Yeah, just going to stop and say hello to some few more people. Join us, Lynn, then you can jump in. So hello, Gregor and Molly. Hi, lovely to see you here. And see, we've got Indie Live's Twitch, I think that is. Or is that you, Marlene?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, it just shows you how important the context is and how the media can skew things so drastically. You know, if anything, you would think they would want to, the way they behave normally is to make it look as though we're being treated really fairly. Because that to me, like you said, Marlene, that made you think, how dare they? You know, we are not, you know, on the same level as a region. But it came across as that. But actually, when you saw John Swinney speaking, you're thinking, no, so that's not exactly how it happened. It's been twisted slightly.
Although they didn't manage it very well, did they? In that that wasn't out there. But I love the way that he's asked a question about where does this leave the envoy? And you could see John going, who? I never mentioned it.
But there is maybe something else to pick up on from this Council of the Nations and the Regions, because in one of the other tweets that Alex tweeted, which I'll try and get the right one this time, folks. He just said it was Gordon Brown's original proposal to set up this Council for the Nations and Regions, and it was what Alex said was, it was part of a plan to pull any independence teeth from devolution, which is, he always had a nice turn of phrase. Anyway, that got me curious. So I kind of looked a bit into that, and it was it was a couple of years back. The Labour Party set up a commission to look into changing the constitutional arrangements and intergovernmental arrangements in the UK, and Gordon Brown chaired it. Now, it's a huge, long thing, and And I haven't read it all, but I have read the summary. And actually, there's some good stuff in it. Like, for example, the Sewell Convention, which would be strengthened, so it couldn't be interfered with.
We thought they'd done that already, didn't we?
Well,
when they put it into
remember,
the law?
the Supreme Court said they couldn't. That would be strengthened. I mean, the main thing in the proposal is do away with the House of Lords and replace it with an assembly of nations and regions. So that's quite an interesting idea. But to get back to what was a bit more relevant about that meeting, when I read through it, like some things are saying, well, Scotland could have more powers. For example, give Scotland the ability to make its own international agreements and not exactly treaties, I don't think it would be, the international agreements and trading agreements over issues that are devolved. Well, actually, that would be helpful. So there's some things in it that I was going, oh, that would be quite good. I mean, it has to be said, immediately Starmer got into power, he said, we won't be doing away with the House of Lords, not in this session anyway. Who knows if it'll ever happen. But the thing is, I read it and I kind of felt like, someone's got their hand out to you saying, look, we could give you more powers. And then at the end of it, I just thought, and what will happen is that it felt like an ambush. Maybe a trap, but like an ambush somehow. Now, maybe I'm just kind of like been trying to get us independent for so long, and we're not there yet, that I've just got too cynical. But it just didn't. There's two things going on, and one is you can have more powers, and the other thing is an agreement to work constructively and positively within the United Kingdom constitutional arrangement. So it's a bit like Gordon Brown's vow, isn't it? And
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know how often these things are supposed to happen, but to see if they get summoned to Manchester or wherever the next one is.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so shall we move on to that? Here's a clue as to what the next topic is.
Is that me lying on the ground? No,
okay. that's us. Labour and the winter fuel payments still rumbling on.
Yeah.
But what was quite interesting this month that we spotted, of course, was that there was a motion in Holyrood, and other than 6 abstainers and 2 who voted against, 14 of the Labour MSPs voted to means test and remove the winter fuel payments. So here is the roll of shame. Those are the 14 Labour MSPs who voted to support Westminster's cuts to the winter fuel payments. So I don't know if any of those are in your constituencies. I'm glad to say they're not in mine. We don't seem to, we don't have one. But shame on you guys. Shame on you.
Yeah.
And I mean, that winter fuel payment, it's like the whole, it's faded a bit, but it is still carrying on. And I mean, I came across, it's an economist called Mariana Mazzucato, who was on Question Time. And she came up with just using the winter fuel payment as an example of how the Labour government, as soon as they got in, have done it wrong. So I think I've got it somewhere. Where are we? Let's just listen to that. It's not long. Here we go. Here she comes.
Saying we need to cut in order to reduce that hole. My view is that potentially that hole only becomes bigger. Why? Because the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of action. In other words, if you're actually cutting areas like the winter fuel tax, that then perhaps even makes the people who are not receiving their winter fuel, and there's lots of pensioners who will not, and they then get sick and they end up in hospital, there's a cost there. And so any sort of modeling and analysis of whether this was the right thing to do to save, what was it, 1.3 or 1.6 a billion, has to be taking a long run view. And by the way, this is always true, right? Anytime we make a cut, it looks like it's a cut and it looks like there might be a saving. But in so many different instances, we see that actually that ends up costing the economy much more because of what it actually does, again, to the kind of social fabric, to the health and well-being of people. it costs less, to educate a child than to put them in prison. So there's all sorts of different ways in which
you've got to find the money up front to do that. And where are you?
Well, no, because governments aren't
it?
households, right? I mean, as a person, you would have to do that, but governments always create money. The question is, are you just creating money?
By borrowing? By borrowing or
by
raising
borrowing,
taxes?
of course. Well, you could do both, but the point is, you don't just want helicopter money and spending for spending's sake. If you're actually spending in anything that kind of expands the productive capacity of the economy, but also health and well-being of people, ultimately, that will also increase productivity, it will increase growth.
It's really interesting, that, isn't it? The cost of, of means testing it is more than the actual saving. And do you know what that reminded me of? Just Russell Finley, perpetually angry man, leader of the Tories. He's now talking about Scots wouldn't mind if we got rid of the free prescriptions. And well, speak for yourself, mate, and maybe wait until somebody elects you before you put that kind of thing out. But it's the same thing. I mean, that's the case for the prescriptions, is that it actually costs less to give them to everybody, and then people avail themselves of healthcare and engage. Yeah, sorry, Marlene.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And what I mean, I like the clip because of what she said, and I heard it and thought, oh well, we did say exactly that 2 months ago in this program when it all happened. We had the figures and said it's going to cost you'll lose $2 billion out of it, because all the folk who are eligible for pension credit start claiming them, and that's this isn't going to work. And and they hadn't done an official kind of evaluation of it. But the other reason I like that clip is because she just really took Fiona Bruce down.
Shut her down.
Shut down.
It's like talk to the hand.
I wish that. Don't know how much people picked on it when she said governments are not households; they create currency, and that's something that we still need to get people to understand that. But what I really like was she's talking about it as about it being the social fabric. Like, look after your health and well-being of your population, and you're going to get a more productive nation. But those in power, I don't think they care about the social fabric. That's really, they just don't seem to want to run a country that way. They're just looking at how can we make money, and running a country is not a business.
Yeah.
Look
who they've chosen to pick on as well. They've chosen to pick on young folk in the 2-child cap and old folk with the winter fuel, neither of whom perhaps vote for them.
And there were, I can't remember what it was. Someone was talking about maybe it was us before discussing it, about the birth rate. Because of that, the birth rate has plummeted. So we haven't got if you want to call them, the economic units being created to deliver, to do the work, to provide the services, because they're saying, well, no. People are thinking, and to be fair, I did it myself when I was having my family. Can we really afford to have, because I was thinking about the lifestyle I wanted to be able to provide for them. I sometimes think to myself, I'd have loved more children, but actually, no, 3's enough. But however, it was a factor in considering when we were having our family.
Yeah, exactly. I got to the point where I thought, yes, I've done that now. I don't think I'll do that again.
That's what I thought. I can't improve on this.
I don't think. Yeah, that's just we're fine. That'll do. We'll do that again.
Anyway, I made my contribution.
But again,
say hello to.
It's interesting. Sorry, go on, Fiona.
No, I was just going to say hello. We've got Evelyn has joined us, and Jock. Welcome, folks.
Yeah. Hi, both of you. I was just going to say, the budget is tomorrow.
And, is it tomorrow? I was wondering when it was.
Yes.
Yeah, the budget is tomorrow. And it'll just be interesting to see if any of Rachel Reeves' thinking at all is in parallel to what Mariana Mazzucato has said in that clip, about you've got to think about long term. You think about long term and what are the costs and the benefits long term. And if there is a cost benefit long term, then it's something that is worthwhile investing in. So let's wait and see.
Oh, and just a quick, this is gossip, right? I saw this. This was a tweet on Twitter. Somebody had posted that Rachel Reeves, although she says she was worked for the bank. She actually worked in their complaints department. She wasn't an economist. Now, I don't know if that's true, but
well, if it's true, you heard it here, folks.
you heard it here first. If it's
And
not true, we got it from someone else.
If it's not true, then Fiona will not be appearing in this programme ever again.
I'll be. Take me away, Gov.
Joke.
Okay,
so where are we then?
Let's move on to having chilled ourselves with no winter fuel. GB Energy is not going to bail us out anytime soon. And this is Stephen Flynn with one of his very few appearances these days. Now, we no longer have any seats at Westminster, barely, but he's asking question of I think it must be somebody who's charged with bringing in GB Energy. So he's asking, when will energy bills come down? Let's find out.
The energy to bring down energy bills.
To
bring down energy bills as promised.
Well, look, the only way to get energy bills down, and indeed to get greater energy security, is to get more renewable energy onto the grid. You know, we do have to keep reminding people that the reason why energy bills went up wasn't because of renewable energy, it was because of a global oil and gas price crisis. So therefore, every megawatt, every gigawatt of renewable energy that we will put on the grid will help bring bills and prices down. Now, the exact mechanism by that happens is, of course, a matter of policy, how you decide to bring those bills to the consumer, and that is not the scope of Great British Energy.
So where's my 300 quid that you promised me then? That's what.
So that was the new. He is the chair of CEO, I suppose, of Great British Energy, who's going to be based in
Manchester
now.
Manchester.
I was getting slightly further north, but. I wonder, I would like to hear what Stephen Flynn's got to say about that, actually, because they made such a song and dance about it being based in Aberdeen, energy capital of the UK, and then, well, we'll put a plaque on the wall, but actually the real jobs are in London. Does he think we can't see him?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think they have got an office up in Aberdeen, didn't it? But I heard a description of it. It's kind of like a couple of rooms within an office building, and they've just rented a couple. Just right. I mean, I suppose, to be fair, you have to start somewhere, but we'll see. Yeah. I mean, it's just you never get a clear answer. Someone says something, and then you go, yeah, but is it going to be producing energy? Oh, yes. And then the next day, someone says, oh no, it won't.
It won't.
And will it bring bills down? Yes, of course. How? But no one knows the answer. No one knows the answer.
No, they just kind of fluff around that, and that's a matter of policy, and we're not concerned with policy. Like, so what are you concerned with? I mean, from other reading about it, it's just like they're looking for investment, and again, we keep getting in. People, they're looking for foreign investment, and if you've got foreign investment, you end up being run by foreigners. Not that there's anything wrong with foreigners. We like them to come and visit and spend their money here. We don't want them to come and buy our country and end
all the money flows out.
The profits going away rather than being reinvested in the country.
Yeah. I just stuck up Alan's comment for you, Fiona, because it backs you up there. So
thank you, Alan. That could help when I get sued. And I'm just going to put Andrew's comment up because you can come again, Andrew. Thank you.
I take it that little logo, Andrew, is not my king.
Not my king.
Yeah, not my king.
Down with the crown.
Before we move off the cheap energy or the not cheap energy topic, you had a clip about the Octopus Energy boss, didn't you, Marlene?
I do. It's Greg Jackson, who. So we've got it's an audio clip, which I'll just say. I got this off the SNP website because they had it. I couldn't find it anywhere else, but it's actually from, I think, back in April, and he was talking. He was on radio. Radio 4, and he was talking about different ways in which you could change the way that the grid works for everyone's benefit. So here it is.
Parts of England and Wales have got the highest standing charges, so they generate the most electricity. They don't benefit from that, and yet they pay the highest standing charges. Meanwhile, even in the southeast of England, zonal pricing would reduce costs, and it would attract investment like batteries to help make the most of electricity in those tougher regions. The great news is, first of all, zonal pricing reduces waste dramatically. Everyone's bills go down. And indeed...
Actually go down or just
regions,
lower than they relatively might be?
They go down versus where they would be without it. Because today, last year we spent £3 billion. The year before we spent £4 billion turning off wind farms when it's windy, paying people to not generate because we couldn't shift the electricity to where the demand was. If we change the price, you get more demand in the regions it's cheap. Things like data centers or heavy industrial use that move there. By the way, this is what they do in Scandinavia, and you've seen huge success. And I think, look, Scotland, parts of England, Wales would have some of the cheapest electricity in Europe, and you'd see industry coming back that's been leaving these shores.
Yeah, and didn't you mentioned something about that different regional pricing in Norway that you'd picked up on when you were in Norway, I think, Fiona, didn't you?
No, not that I recall. Not regional. I'm sure they do have.
Okay,
It's
well,
much more
they do. Well,
central.
yeah, well, they do. I thought it was you that had told me about it, but maybe it wasn't. So the kind of sensible thing is in the far north of Norway. I mean, Norway's not exactly hot climate anyway, but it's even colder in the far north. Then the tariffs that get put onto electricity are lower because people need more of it, and and that could happen. In fact, at one point, the Norwegian government made some of those tariffs right down to zero, just to help people at the very worst of the high energy prices. Maybe that was what you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
So they can do that, but it would be good if at least the UK government set that up for the UK, although we wouldn't be in charge of saying what the tariffs actually would be. If we were independent, then we could do that, on even smaller regions within Scotland, and it would be up to us to say what the tariffs would be.
It's the whole. And I was just going to say, I saw Greg on Laura Kuenssberg, and what he was talking about there was they were planning on having a huge investment in solar panels, and I think it was northeast of England somewhere, but they couldn't actually get attached to the grid until 2037.
Yeah.
He says, we've got money here, we want to invest so we can drive down prices, it can be greener energy, but we can't get onto the grid till 2030. 13 years until they say, well, you can then come onto the grid. I mean, that's just when we're trying to get to using renewables more, is utterly ridiculous.
It's just lack of investment in the grid, isn't it? Which is privatized like everything else.
And it's just such another good example of what Mariana Mazzucato, I'll get that name right at some point, Mazzucato, was saying about, you've got to think about, you have to think long term. And if long term there's a real benefit, and you could, if someone had just said 10 years ago, whoever was in government, who was it again? Oh, yes, Cameron. If they just said, let's get on with that, George Osborne had put the money into that, then we'd be in a completely different position now, as the UK as a whole, never mind what we could have done if we'd been independent. So it's a good example, a very good example of it.
I don't see many adverts because I don't have a TV license, so I don't watch TV. But I did get an advert on, I think it was YouTube or somewhere I don't normally see them. And it was from Shell, I think. And they were talking about how wonderful this pipeline was. It's going to take all that energy from Scotland down to where it's needed. And I practically was throwing something at the computer screen. And they just don't seem to get how offensive and infuriating that is.
Yeah, indeed. I know.
Yeah.
And as Molly's just commenting, it's not, it's not that hard to do it. I mean, you do have to kind of reconfigure the grid so that there's more local, there's more of a local kind of system. But it's not rocket science, really.
It's not.
I'll tell you, it was funny you mentioning that the fact that Greg Jackson said that on the Laura Kuenssberg show. He was one of our guests, and I nearly put that clip up, although it was a little bit more complicated, so I went for the easier one. But Laura Kuenssberg was not expecting him to say the same thing. That, for example, Scotland could have really, really cheap electricity. It could almost be zero at some point in the day. And you kind of sort of say, she went, okay, well, passing swiftly onwards. You know, didn't kind of. It was quite funny. Anyway.
Yeah. Good evening, Hashbury. Finally decided to amble along. He's been watching women's sport again.
Oh, did we win? Good.
Yeah,
half time, 2-0. Half time.
Right.
Half
time.
See, I thought that was hot topic, HT. That's what I know that's for. Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is about the Scottish visa. Now, the last time I heard anything about having a specific visa for Scotland, because we've got specific demographics and specific needs, I seem to recall the Labour Party, when they were trying to get elected, promising they would have a good look at that. So now they have been elected. What are they saying, Marlene?
Well, yeah, I've got some information that should we watch Pete Wishart first? Should we do that first? Yeah, okay. So Pete has a bit of an attempt in the Commons to talk about this. Here he is.
For his question, he has raised this issue on a number of occasions. He will be aware that we are not introducing a Scottish visa scheme or devolving control of immigration policy, and this has been made clear to the Scottish Government. Instead, we must together address the underlying causes of skills shortages and overseas recruitment in different parts of the UK, which this Government is doing.
Pete Wishart. And I thank the Minister for a tiresome and repetitive response. She will know that Scotland has a whole range of demographic and population difficulties that need urgently addressed. Every sector, from social care to hospitality, including business leaders, are calling out for drastic actions. Even her Scottish Labour colleagues are beginning to understand the enormity of this task. Today, we find that Labour's grotesque three-child benefit cap is now having an impact on Scotland's birth rate. So instead of slapping down her Scottish colleagues, and instead of rejecting this out of hand, why doesn't she work with us just to see if it might actually work?
I mean, the very idea that the right solution for London is also going to work for Stornoway, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? But they so know we'll different parts of the UK just all have one fix. They don't
seem to understand the interconnectivity of everything. You know, there's impacts everywhere. So birth rate goes down.
Very zen.
Okay, yeah.
I thought you'd gone off into a philosophical, train of thought there.
It kind of is. It's like nothing stands alone in isolation, isn't it?
You're right. Yeah.
There's always impacts here, there, and everywhere. And then, and they don't live in the real world. They live in their nice little bubble. I'm looking at one of the comments there from Woofpet saying, when you get your heating bills paid for by the taxpayer, why would you even enter your head to consider ways of reducing bills for the public? And that's almost
a very good
nail
point.
on the head. Are they thinking about the public when they're coming up with these policies? Do you know? We've got the like we don't know it. With the wrong people are in government running the country because they're not running it to run the country for the population.
It's crazy. It's when you think how much we were that election. We were also get rid of the Tories, get rid of the Tories. Now we've got Labour. No, get rid of Labour, get rid of Labour.
Well, we're saying that. I remember maybe not everyone. Maybe there was a lot of people up here who voted for Labour, so maybe they're quite happy with it.
And I've met a few of them who are almost hanging their heads in shame now. Going, I just wanted to get rid of the Tories, and I'm like, yes. And what have you got? And you can't even call them Tory light because they're not Tory light. And
just Tories.
There's no way that they are the socialist party that Labour once was. And that almost makes them worse because they purport to be the party that cares for the people and looks after the people. They don't. At least the Tories were upfront about it.
Exactly. And then there's this thing about working people that seem to have got themselves in a jam about the last couple of days. So of course it was in the manifesto, and it just sounded like a kind of kind of quite reasonable, quite slick way of saying, oh, these are the people we're looking out for, and everyone knows who a working person is. But now it turns
not
out that,
children, not
well,
old
maybe
people,
not,
not folk on
maybe
benefit.
not. You're a working person, Lynn. And so Fiona, you and I, are we? No, we're not. Are you?
Well, not in any way that they would know recognise us.
When you get to pension age, then surely by definition you're not a working person. But then you might be a person whose income, comes from I don't know, houses that you've bought and let out, or stocks and shares. Now you and I are not in that category, but I suppose. So it'll just be really.
I thought you were both property magnates. Are you not?
No.
Well, it sort of sounds almost like in the past, Labour's. I suppose everyone did it, but Labour in particular. So the more money you earn, the more tax you pay, and it just sort of feels like maybe there's a shift going to. It's also where you get your money from. And even if it's just a small amount of money, if it comes from investments or a property that you're using, or a business that you're running and taking dividends from, you're not a working person. Anyway, again, we'll see tomorrow.
They've tied themselves up in knots with pre-election promises, haven't they? But you had another clip, didn't you?
I do. It's to go back to the whole thing about the Scottish visa, because it's just to pick, because Pete Wishart did mention that there was support for it amongst some Scottish Labour MPs, and there had been as well before the. So let's just get a bit of background on the Scottish visa. So, okay, so this is going way back to the Brexit campaign, and Michael Gove, bless him, said Scotland in the course of the campaigning, he's going, well, if the Leave campaign was successful, Scotland should decide its immigration policy. So you go, oh, that's a good idea, isn't it? So yeah, okay. So that was Michael Gove, 2016, and then her nibs, Dame Jackie Baillie. This was this year. It was in the campaign for the general election we've just had. She's saying her party was open to talks with the Scottish government about the Scottish visa. Fantastic, who'd have thought it? And then more recent, so Stephen Gethins he has been an SNP MP before, and he's back in the Commons, and he's one of the people who will be bringing in private members bill, and he's going to be doing it to allow such a Scottish visa. So you go, great. Well, really good that he's got the opportunity to do that. And then it turns out that Labour MPs in Glasgow and in the Western Isles, they've come out and welcomed it. And the Scottish hospitality industry has also welcomed it. So you go, great, fantastic. A Scottish visa. Wow. That'll be a job done then. No, and thrice no. That's a no from Yvette Cooper.
Aye.
UK Home and Homesick. No Scottish visa. And then that was one of her ministers whom we saw earlier replying to Pete Wishart. And I mean, I did have a wee look to see if Stephen Gethins has written anything so subsequent to all that happening, and apparently he's still quite hopeful that something can come of it.
Well, we're all hopeful, but nothing. Yeah.
And he's got the private members bill. He knows it won't. The second reading won't happen until next April. So he's kind of like saying, okay, that would mean that we've got a bit of time to garner support for it amongst cross-party, because there is cross-party support for it in Scotland. I mean, it might be that Wales might come in and back it. He knows, and he's been saying that it's not unique, and that there are examples of. In Australia, I think, is an example where there are different immigration policies and numbers and caps on people who can come in different parts of Australia, and it works. It works fine. It also works in Canada, so it's not like it hasn't it's kind of like it's a really strange idea that there's no evidence. There's no evidence for. So
Here's
yeah,
an
he's quite keen. He's quite hopeful. He says that he can do something. Personally, I wouldn't put much money on it.
No, but it's good that industries in Scotland are also speaking out as well, because you'll have chambers of commerce and members of chambers of commerce are saying, hospitality. And I saw it because I always holiday in Scotland, and you see places where they're barely functioning because they can't get the staff. So much so that I cleared tables in one place we stopped off on holiday just because there was one person who was taking the orders and also serving the orders, and there was one person in the kitchen. And this was a busy cafe on the way up, it's just up at Dalwhinnie. And I thought, and then you come in and you look and there's these tables and people have obviously fed them, but they've not had time to clear the tables. So I cleared about 4 or 5 tables before I left just to make their job easier for them. But
you'll be doing the night shift in the care home at this rate.
But that's it. But they can't, people then come over, tourists come over and they expect to be able to go and eat somewhere. But they can't get that because they can't get the staff to work it in these places.
And again, it's just another example of this sort of short term and not taking into account and that's a good word for it, blinkered, short term and blinkered, and going, no, but we will be doing something that we have to do something about our workforce. And you think, well, that would be a thing to do, and it would be kind of quite easy to do. And it's kind of short term and it's blinkered, and it's not taken the longer term effects into it. I mean, especially in Scotland, because we've got a shortage in terms of getting people to do the jobs that are there, but we've also got a demographic problem there with an older population and bringing younger people in. It would help that all over, but no, somehow you can't do that because that's not how they think about it. And we need a UK-wide solution, which is very unlikely to be a very helpful Scottish solution.
I'm just watching this. Hashbury has got a theory on this, though.
Oh, God.
I can just say that my new cat is a Maine Coon, so it would feed quite a few people. So
there's another comment, actually. I'm just trying to keep track of these because they're having quite a good chat in the comments between themselves. Molly's asked an interesting question. This is going back to the energy one. Is it right they're building pylons up and down Great Britain? If so, what are farmers going to do? This is interesting because Leslie Riddoch actually had a bit of a rant about that, because they're not building pylons up and down Great Britain. They're building them up and down Scotland, and they're putting them underground in England because they don't want to spoil their wonderful views. Which again, it's just infuriating that it's cheaper to put a pylon above ground, costs a lot more to put it underground. And it may be that some of our, granite is perhaps particularly hard to get through.
Yeah.
But
there is that. But then the other thing they're doing is they're doing undersea cables from Scotland, from Aberdeen, down to the east coast to get the electricity that way. Well, I mean, that's okay. I mean, we can use those once we're independent. And
I'll tell you something though.
I was just going to say, Scotland is a resource for England to use. That's the way I feel.
Yeah.
That, when we no longer become useful, that's maybe when they'll consider it. It's like they don't want Scotland to thrive. We're just going back to the visas there and saying, no, you can't have it. You can't. What do they think? If we have our own visas, people come to Scotland, do they think they're all going to suddenly go, great, we've got to Scotland, we can just go to England now? People that come to Scotland, all the people I've met that come to Scotland, they love Scotland.
Yeah.
We're a welcoming nation, friendly, and they would hop down and then come back up. I've dipped my toe in the water. I think I'll just come back up here.
I was just going to tell you a little thing my mother said about pylons, because I was having a little rant. My mother's 90. And we were talking about pylons, and she said, well, it'd be a really, really big hole that you'd have to dig to put them underground, wouldn't it? And so, no, you wouldn't put the whole 100-foot pylon
underground.
You just put the cable. Oh dear.
Oh gosh, I know.
Yes,
I know.
Wolfpet, good point. They want to put nuclear here too. Now, that was something else I spotted that I wish I'd clipped now, because there was something that sleazy Michael Shanks in Rutherglen had come up with some amendment to the planning laws that would exempt nuclear installations from them. Now, if you think the only reason we don't have nuclear power station and GMO and various other things in Scotland is because the Scottish government has been able to use the planning laws which are devolved. So this is an attempt to get round that by the back door. And I really think we need to do maybe some digging about that. And some of these things, we need to start getting out there and protesting some of these proposals. I think having got fired up with our protest at the weekend, we're just desperate for a bit more direct action.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I got really fired up about, although it was another thing. There's been one or two this afternoon actually. Was I was just reading that about the Scottish Affairs Committee. So this is the Scottish Affairs Committee down in Westminster, and until the election, it was chaired by Pete Wishart. There were several other SNP MPs on it, and then it's cross-party. So now the idea of that Scottish Affairs Committee has always been that it would take Westminster to task on behalf of Scotland. So it could call, it could call who it likes, but it could call experts, it could call ministers to say, well, you're doing this, but have you thought through how that's going to affect Scotland, because things are a bit different. So it's that sort of thing. So the new one, excuse me, of course, completely rearranged now because of the election. Pete Wishart, of course, is not the chair. Actually, it's my MP, Patricia Ferguson, who has been elected to the chair of it. She's Labour.
She's only been in for 5 minutes.
Well, but all of them have. You would, but if you want a Scottish MP to chair it, all of them have only been in for 5 minutes, because you wouldn't have the Secretary of State for Scotland chairing it, and he was the only Labour guy beforehand. So, and there might be one SNP MP on it, but that's not sure yet. But the MP for Windsor, he's on it, and there's of course there wasn't going to be so much of a Scottish an SNP kind of presence, because they've only got the 9 MPs. But they would have thought to have had at least one or two. It looks like they may not have any. And how they're talking about it is that they will summon. That was the word, summon. Scottish government ministers. I don't know if they can summon officials, but Scottish government ministers down to London and then quiz them about what's happening in Scotland. Now, that is a complete reversal of what that committee has always worked. And I sort of heard this. So I heard this after I'd been reading Gordon Brown's commission thing, and I thought, no wonder my response to that was it was just an ambush, and that's another ambush, and what will happen. They'll start doing it, and BBC Scotland and elsewhere will be picking up clips from it. They'll be pushing that out as especially in the run up to Holyrood. And I just was furious, and I saw that
you swore there, Marlene, saying BBC. That's who we're protesting on.
Protest junkies, and I mean, it kind of leaves me speechless, really. Not for very long, then I start talking about it, but I just get infuriated by that.
Yeah, but the Secretary of State's role, that was supposed to be Scotland's man at Westminster. But since devolution, it's become Westminster's man in Scotland, and then the whole Scottish office that shouldn't exist after devolution, but it does. So yes, we're getting very ranty this evening, folks. So what's Evelyn saying there? Apparently at the last minute they gave SNP 1 and SNP have suggested Stephen Flynn. Okay, well at least that would be. I miss seeing him in action actually. I used to watch Parliament TV all the time. I barely ever look at it now, other than just you see the odd thing, but it just feels like something going on in another country that I'm not really interested in.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I'm glad that they have given in at the last minute, and if it's Stephen who does it, he'll obviously do a good job. Yeah. Oh, here.
Hi, James. A bit late.
Secretary of State. Look at that. Secretary of State again, Scotland. Quite right. Yeah.
That's what I think of him as now, and I have to, occasionally do find myself typing that, the Secretary of State against Scotland.
Yeah, there's Hashbury saying Tory Andrew Bowie seems to be in Politics Live every week, and it brings us back round to the point about the state media, the BBC. They're not going to show us in a good light ever. Anything that does show us in a good light gets twisted round, spun in a different way to make it look as though it's bad, or we're subsidy junkies, not just protest junkies, we're subsidy junkies as well. They twist everything on their head, they double down on it, and if that's what some people are seeing,
but it bites them in the bum though, because we now disregard what they say. We just know that they're lying.
Well, we do. But you made a point at one point when you and I were talking, or maybe it was on Saturday, about that instead of referring to the money that comes to Scotland as being
the block grant.
The block grant.
I think we should call it the block refund, because it's some of our money back, and it makes it sound as if we were out there with a begging bowl. Anyway, just talking of those folk down the road. Those of you who remember Johnson, we refused to give him his Sunday name. Johnson has got a book out now.
He's got a book out. Is it doing well?
Well, I have some inside knowledge on this, but first, I just want to congratulate. This is Waterstones. I'm just saying, James Connolly, sorry, a bit late stripping wallpaper. Well, that's probably more important, James, but glad you could finally join us. You can rewind and listen from the beginning. Right, this is Waterstones' product placement for Boris's book. How cool is that? So you've got the real one is this one, the one in Unleashed, it's called, or as John Nicholson unkindly tweeted, unleashed and unread. It's next to Unhinged, Surrounded by Liars, The Psychology of Stupid, How They Broke Britain, and A Short History of the World in 50 Lies. Perfect product placement.
That's great. It really is.
But my story, what should I call him? A relative, my son, works in a bookshop. I won't say which one because he'll, doesn't want to lose his job. But they have had Boris's book on the shelves for a month now, and nobody yet has bought one. But people keep coming in, and he says, the customers, they come in and they go, "Has anyone bought one yet?" And he goes, "No." And they go, "Great, put it back." And there's he gets way more people asking if any have been bought than he does. I think they maybe had one old boy bought one, but that was only recently. For the first couple of weeks, none at all. So
you're not going to get one for your mum's Christmas then?
Well, there's an idea. No, she doesn't need any encouragement.
Okay.
She's already got the Telegraph.
Yes, look at Wolf Pet's right. 2 million quid advance.
Aye. Well, because he lied, he was going to bother writing it. I think he's probably ghostwritten.
Wow.
Anyway, right. So that's actually everything that we were going to cover. All the topics that we had. Ashbury tells us Scotland's women are now 4-0. Now 65 minutes, 5-0 on aggregate.
Yeah, because they won the first leg over in Hungary. Yeah. What struck me about that was that you can watch the women's matches, international matches, live, but you can't watch the men's international live on TV. I think you can maybe watch them on YouTube or something. But anyway, that's a whole other topic that we'll leave to other people who are actually interested in.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say, I ended up watching the the swimming, the World Swimming Championships, one of the finals where I was in
Dundee.
where were we, Lynn? McManus Institute in Dundee,
yes.
with Lynn and our friend Joy, who happens to be the mum of Duncan Scott, the swimmer. And his final was up. So we were sitting in the cafe of the museum and we all had phones out with an app that was giving us the TV. So, and his waitress came over, was trying to take our order. We're like sort of, coffee, yeah, bacon sandwich, and getting back to watching this thing. And he got a silver, which was wonderful. But I haven't seen anything much about that either. But yes, so that is everything. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined us. There's loads of people been chatting away in the comments, which is always lovely. And just to finish off, we're just going to play, I promised you the clip that we nicked from someone on Twitter called the Emir of Jokistan. I'm sure that's not his real name, but we've taken that. And what it is, it's a clip of Alex Salmond's body in its coffin being taken up to back to his home in preparation for the burial, and it's with the Yes bikers with it. And there was a huge cortege of cars afterwards with flags, which, you know, we didn't have. We only had 1 minute and 1 minute 50 of it, and which I've actually stuck to some music, which I thought was apt. It's by Scott Buckley and it's called Titan. And I think if there's anything, you know, the word you associate with Salmond, the word we heard most often about him was that he was a titan of Scottish politics. So he was buried today. So I think we'll maybe just end by saying rest in peace, Alex, and your contribution to Scottish politics will never be forgotten. And thanks to everybody for watching. And we will catch you all. We'll be back again next week. And yeah, here's the end. So bye now. Thanks for watching.
Bye.